This is the Venturing Angler Podcast. I'm Tim Harden. In this episode, we're chatting with Eugene Pawlowski, a world-traveling angler who's been just about everywhere. Let's chat with Eugene. I'm on my second Yeti of coffee.
Hot damn! I'm on finishing a glass of red wine.
That's funny. All right, well,
Yeah,
we'll get over this time change and we can both go
yeah,
to sleep after. Okay.
yeah. Perfect.
All right, so Eugene, welcome to the Venturing Angler Podcast. It's great to have you after so much time. I don't know when we first started communicating. I know we met once in Orlando, but I've always followed your adventures, at least on social media, and so it's great to have you. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks, Tim. Yeah. It's been a real seesaw match trying to get our time zones aligned in between my schedule and yours. So it would almost seem like we'd be about to get everything lined up and then get our ducks in a row, and then one of us would get something coming from the sideline and throw us out.
I don't know when I started doing this podcast, maybe 2015, 26, I don't know. But this has been the hardest one to plan, and it's been a back and forth of WhatsApp messages saying like, okay, what time is it there? All right, what time is it there? Can you do 2 p.m.? Then like looking at world calendars and their time zones. And so here we are, finally. I'm drinking coffee and you're drinking wine.
Yeah, perfect.
So where are you right now?
I'm currently in Brisbane, in Queensland, here in Australia. It's sort of like, I'm just south of Brisbane, I guess, on the Gold Coast. Just here, sort of part of my real life job, I guess. That sort of funds and keeps me fishing in all these fun out there places. But I'm just here overseeing a refit on it's like a 35-meter yacht, I guess. It's it's been out of the water for about 6 months. It's probably going to be out of the water for another 4 months. Yeah, so it's gone over a really big yard time, sort of been totally scuttled, and then sort of be revamped and just about brand new by the time we go back in order in December, where and then I'll take it back around to Western Australia, where I've sort of been based for the last couple of years. As anyone knows, Western Australia, West is best. It's sort of during the whole COVID thing, it was almost like an island on an island, I guess. It was sort of they just shut their borders off to the rest of Australia and sort of took a really hardline stance on people in and out with the whole pandemic drama, which was sort of good, but sort of it shut everyone out. Like stages there, people couldn't get home for Christmases, and people couldn't have family come in or out. It was a real challenge for a little while, but that sort of all relaxed the last year or so, which is for the better. But Western Straits, it's a huge, vast expanse, half of Australia, I guess. Then as you get up into the northwest, it becomes very, very wild and remote, with just little populated sort of communities here and there. And the main sort of area where I've been working up there for the last couple of years on these vessels, captain's role, is sort of the Kimberley. That's stretches from Broome and sort of goes all the way up to the Northern Territory border, where it borders on the Joseph Bonaparte Gulf. So it's just a huge uninhabited stretch of coast, and for six months of the year, it's totally closed off by road. And even then, when you can go in by road, you've sort of got to have be very self-sufficient, heavy duty off-road sort of 4x4ing to even get in there and access some of it. And then realistically, the best way to see it is by vessel and cruising the coast. And even then, whatever vessel you're on, you've still got to be very self-sufficient in what you got. With carrying fuel and diesel and unleaded and fresh water and provisions to make that do that stretch. I guess I've sort of been stumbling around there for probably over 7 or 8 years now, in all up, and working intensively there for the last sort of 3 years. And I've spent that much time there, and I still haven't even really scratched the surface. A lot of the areas there, it's a pretty wild place in North Australia, that's for sure.
I noticed you said you said something like that's sort of where you're based. You tend to be on the move, and you travel quite a bit. Well, what is it that has led to this type of lifestyle where, for a lot of people, the stability of a permanent base camp is important, but it seems like you don't really have. You might have a place where you keep things.
Yeah, that's true. I guess maybe I got my parents to thank for that. I think maybe early on in my sort of early 20s, I just decided I just didn't want to get to that age and sort of look back on things and sort of wish, oh, why didn't I go do that, or why didn't I take that opportunity when I had it? And I've just sort of lived by that motto a little bit. It's probably a little bit probably doesn't work for everyone, and some people may look a little reckless as things, but I've definitely got no complaints, and it's led me on some pretty great adventures and seen some really cool fishing and met some fantastic people in my life so far. So I guess that's in a little bit of in a nutshell that sort of got me to where I am. But COVID's definitely slowed it down a bit, which I think probably most people in the world will agree with that. But should be good as it starts to open up a bit more now and travel becomes a little bit easier. I'll start to be able to spread the wings a little bit and get back to some of the places I've fished and enjoyed and have been on the list of wanting to get back to.
Let's talk about some of those places. This is a big one. This will be the biggest question, but might as well go for it. Where have you been?
Ooh, yeah. I should have done some serious prep and written the list down, but
Well, if it makes you feel any better, I did one recently, and the person is known for a fish and a destination. Maybe not the destination, I can't remember, but he completely forgot.
Yeah.
And then after the podcast was like, I forgot my favorite thing. So we can always correct it in a future episode in 3 years.
Yeah.
But
yeah, sounds good. Where have I? Let me see. I'll start. I would say Australia, but it doesn't really count, I guess, in the grand scheme of things.
Counts for us.
I live here and grown up here, but yeah, pretty much all over. So Australia as a whole, I won't go into I can go into the detail of Australia if you like after this question, I guess, maybe for maybe people that are interested. But
wait,
on sort of a globe,
just so you know, like a lot of people in the U.S. are completely oblivious about Australia, and I even called a friend recently, and I was like, "Hey, it turns out Australia is a huge country," and she said to me that people will say like, "Yeah, I'm planning a trip," and they name like 4 cities and 4 different areas of the entire country, thinking it's like a day trip, for each one.
Yeah.
So
No.
we're a bit oblivious over here, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, I guess you can put it a little bit of references. Just say I was just recently working out sort of like a bit of a passage plan for taking a boat vessel I'm working on back around to Fremantle, which is in Perth in Western Australia. And sort of if I go around the bottom of Australia, like the southern part across the Great Australian Bight, or if I go up around the very top, transiting across sort of Cape York and down the Western Australian coast. If you just went like you just left Brisbane, where I am, sorry, and just travelled every day at like 20 kilometres an hour, it's probably going to take you about 20 days non-stop. And
Wow.
that's in a boat. And if you jump in a plane from Brisbane here and fly to Perth, you're looking at about 5.5 hours direct flight
It's
across it. So
I googled a map just to look at it as I was talking, and then it says on Google what people ask about Australia. And I'll give you a few of the most popular
yeah,
searches for which Australia is famous for. Is Australia good to live? 5 facts about Australia, and then here's where it gets good. What language does Australia speak? How do I say hello? How do I say hello in Australian? Um,
yeah,
what does Aussie oi 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 mean? So those are all in the
yeah,
top 10. So
yeah.
apologies
We're
in advance for all the
no,
people
it's
here
all
who do.
good. Yeah, that's all good. We've really made a mess of the English language, us Aussies. If we can make it lazy, we definitely will.
That's what they
It's
say
just
about
that
the
I think
US too.
it's the Aussie sort of laid back nature, I think. But yeah, so I'm getting off topic a bit here. But in Australia, I've so fishing wise, I fish. From what I've said, Western Australia, everywhere from sort of Exmouth, which is the Northwest Cape, Ningaloo Reef, all the way up through the Kimberley, Broome, up through Dampier, Montebello Islands, and then Northern Territory, where I sort of started some guiding in my early days, and it's sort of where I really first started working on the water, which is Northern Territory, sort of the very top of Australia between, I guess if you go west of Cape York, it's there, and that sort of got your Arafura Sea. So, and like Northern Territory is a very popular sort of a lot of people come to Australia to chase barramundi, it's very similar to snook. That's a very popular place. So I lived and fished up there for probably 7 or 8 years. Fished up Cape York in the Gulf of Carpentaria on the west side, where it's a lot of people would sort of know of that. It's been a very popular area. Some great fly fishing options there. And then I've fished on the other side, the east side, and on the Great Barrier Reef, all the way up to like Lockhart River, Portland Roads, and right out to the edge of the Barrier Reef where it enters the Coral Sea. And then all the way, and then we've got, as you come down the coast from there, you got Cairns, Hingenbrook Island, then sort of you come down in the Whitsunday group, and then Fraser Island,
Oh yeah.
and then yeah, so yeah, and then from there, and then Sydney, I was south of Sydney, whereas where I grew up when I was pretty young, so that's sort of where I started, got in the fishing, I guess, and fly fishing. It started the snowball rolling down the hill, and then from there, they like fished a bit up in like the Australia's sort of alpine area, the high country, the snowy mountains. I caught my first trout. That was the start of fly fishing for me up there with my dad. And then from there, and then have fished down in Tasmania, which is sort of another sort of really nice sort of trout fishery for Australia. And that's sort of summing up Australia there as a whole for myself. Like you could really, we could just do a whole hour long conversation on that really if you wanted to, but I'll keep it brief and maybe come back on that at some stage.
Yeah, that sounds good. I can't though.
Yeah,
I mean, one thing that you
yeah,
highlighted there is there's everything there from trevally to trout, but
yeah,
I can't let Fraser Island go because I've never had the opportunity to talk to somebody on the podcast about it. Are there big blue water species in like flats there or something?
yeah. It does get a little bit of confusion, like, but sort of the right up the very like the northern right up the top of Fraser Island. It's quite a big sort of sandy peninsula spit that comes right out, but it borders on, you have very deep water that's very close to it. So you'll get, and the right time of year, you have like juvenile black marlin and things. They'll be sort of coming down the east coast. Like there's a big sort of current that pushes down from like the warmer waters up in the Great Barrier Reef, and it brings a lot of sort of nutrients and bait fish and things, and they'll follow that current down the coast, and those little black marlin will sort of make their way down south as the southern waters become warmer in our summer months. So they'll follow that food and things down the coast, and that's where it gives people a bit of an opportunity to target those fish very close to, like, almost like a flats fishing situation, or people have encountered those fish moving, just coming up on the edge of them onto those sand flats, I guess, and anywhere from 1 metre to 2 metres to 3 metres of water. So it's a pretty spectacular fishery. And then on top of that, you'll have like northern bluefin tuna and Spanish mackerel and all those sort of guys, and some trevally species that'll they'll push right up in there. It's pretty popular. And then you have on the inside of the island itself, between the island and the mainland, you got to they call it the Great Sandy Straits. So it's just a vast expanse of sand flats that offer up some great, sort of shallow water sight fishing for gold trevally and tuna species, queenfish, and I believe, and some permit at times. So not probably one of the first places you'd want to go to in Australia if you're solely trying to target them, but they do appear in there, that's for sure.
That's cool. Okay, so outside of your home country, what are some of the places you've been?
All right. So I'll start. We'll jump across New Zealand, which is probably way up high on the list for me. It's probably one of my favourite places of anywhere. And then from there, I'll go up. Have had a play around in Samoa and Fiji. From there, then out to Christmas Island, which I think everyone knows of. It's pretty well known sort of spot out in the Pacific there. Done some fishing in Hawaii. Got teased by those giant submariner bonefish you see kicking around there. Yeah. Had probably a few tears as they hooked a couple and they went straight off the reef and went deep. And then from there across to where you guys are, North America. So Louisiana, which is maybe from people over here, it's a pretty cool destination. It's probably the same again. It's one of my favourites down there. Those big redfish. Had a fishing around the Keys and stuff, Everglades, and then keep working my way down, crossed into Bahamas. Just saying, that's probably another one of my favourite destinations. Bahamas, Cuba, Costa Rica, Nicaragua. Where else in there am I missing? Belize. From Belize, and then jump down into Colombia, Aruba. Back down in Argentina, Patagonia, I guess Tierra del Fuego, which that's all part of that area, I guess. And then I feel I'm forgetting somewhere. And then I've dabbled a bit up in Europe, like Slovenia, which is pretty neat. I feel like I'm still missing somewhere. That's a bit of a wrap up on it, I guess, to put it that way.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot. And, when you're, there has to be some sort of like restlessness or something that drives this. What do you, for you, especially, now when you're looking, we're not post-pandemic, but in the travel world we are sort of post-pandemic when it comes to resuming normalcy. What is it that drives you in this way?
I think a hunger and a hunger and a thirst just to experience these different places and fisheries, and maybe a little bit from like just growing up reading those like fly fishing in salt waters and some of those magazines and seeing these destinations and the guys that are out there doing it and chasing these fish and things we'd see on Lefty and Flipper and stuff, catching bones in the Bahamas and things like that, and stuff you'd read on Cuba, and then you get a chance, you can go do it yourself, and it's like, yes, please. I'm like, I'm all about it. I'm all on board. I'm there. Why not?
Uh, of these places you've been, do you have a favorite place or a favorite type of fishing or favorite type of destination that draws you?
Yeah, I do I find it hard to single one out, but Cuba's been a real highlight. Just the people and the experience, like it's pretty hard to beat. Especially on like the fishing's fantastic, but just as a whole travel package and coming from here in Australia, and I guess probably a little similar for people there in North America, where your way of living, it seems so easy, and sometimes we all have a have a cry and a whinge about something that's when you that's probably not that much of an issue, but when you get to somewhere like that and you see what people have got and what they make do with, and you just like really makes you stop and look back at yourself and sort of adjust your way of thinking about how you approach life, definitely. But and then again, like the Bahamas, like that's way up there for me. Just the people are so friendly, and you can walk around in ankle to knee deep water catching bonefish barefoot. Like it's super hard to beat. And everyone's happy and got a smile on their face and super relaxed and chilled. And then New Zealand, of course. That's I think that's if you were to give me one choice, I'd probably out of all of it. And as much as I like saltwater fishing and coming tight to a big tarpon somewhere on a flat or in the jungle of Nicaragua, like I'd probably take New Zealand out of everything. Just that's hard to beat.
For the trout,
Walking
right?
around over there, yeah, for the trout and just the challenge of you know stalking a fish, walking up a river, putting in a lot of hard yards. The fish don't come easy. You got to work at it, and it's like it's hunting or stalking. I guess people that chase deer with a crossbow, oh, not a crossbow, I should say, a bow and arrow. It's probably similar to that, where
Right.
some days you do the hard work and you get one of them fish, when it's a spectacular sized brown, and you just all that hard work, it all comes together, and you just sit there with a smile on your face, and there's no one else around. And that's a pretty neat experience, especially you get to see it all happen right in front of you.
Something I've been trying to understand recently, and I love trout. I guess trout are probably my favorite. But was recently in Argentina, in Patagonia, and everyone I was with was from Montana, Wyoming, and California. So it's a very, very similar destination, and people are there from Montana and catching trout, right? So it's quite a ways to go for a very similar experience. For you, especially when you've already named fish like giant trevally and tarpon, I've found this over and over again. People just keep coming back to trout, and you talked about the pursuit a little bit, but I know that you're also interested in the characteristics and features and various aspects of species. What is it for you about trout that is so attractive?
Um, I guess that once they start getting big and they're sort of them big wild fish that have living in those rivers there, like they are a spectacular fish. And then maybe just something that can it's probably a little similar. Like I'd probably say the fishing there is a little similar to like permit fishing, like New Zealand as a whole. Like some of those big browns in New Zealand, like they can be, they can humble you really quickly. Like similar to permit fishing, where one day there's a fish there, you put the fly right there in front of him, and he just everything comes together and the thing eats it like, it was it's going to eat it every day of the week, and you're like, oh, all right, I got this. I'm good. I got this dialed. And
Yeah.
then for the rest of the week, they give you the finger, and you got not a chance in hell. And New Zealand's a little the same, where you might walk all day, and then you just see that one fish, and you got that one shot, and it's like a little size 16 heron copper or something, or a size 18, and that's you crawl into position to get that shot, and then is that first cast, have you let it enough? Is it going to get the right drift? It does, and then sometimes that he reacts and you get the eat, and then sometimes it all goes wrong and fish drops to the bottom of the pool and pretends to be a log, and you
Right.
just walk back to your camp for 2 hours with wonder wondering, and wait for the next day.
I'd like to hear more about the way you travel and the types of trips you take too. I know that you've been to a number of lodges, but when you were talking about New Zealand, it reminded me that you invited me to join you once, and it was like, if I recall, it was like 3 weeks in the backcountry, intense. But I could be wrong about that. But I remember it was not. No one was going to put a chocolate mint on my pillow. What,
Yeah.
which is great. Um, do you tend to travel solo? Do you have a crew that you travel with? It seems like there's you're kind of doing your own thing often.
Yeah, definitely. Like it depends on the destination and who I'm gonna travel with. Like New Zealand, definitely. Like I've been fishing there for like 12 years, I guess, maybe 13. And but I'm not, for myself, like that's what I enjoy, that fishery there. Like I enjoy being getting out into the hills, have my tent, walking into somewhere. That's a lot of the experience for me as well. On top, the fishing's can almost be a bonus on top of that. But then again, there's places where you go where you know staying in a lodge and utilizing the local guides is where that's where it works and how that destination works. Where if I'm going to fly all the way, if I'm going all the way to Cuba, that's how I'm going to do it. Like, because that's going to be the best way to utilize your time in the water. Or if you go to the Seychelles, that's how you're going to do it, because you're going to go there and fish with those guys who have got it dialed in. When I guess, and a lot of people are probably on the same story. If you got a limit amount of time, but you're going to travel halfway around the world to go do it, you want to try and do it. Not try. You want to do it the right way, and be put in the right area where those fish are. And then sometimes, like Bahamas, have done some of the other islands more of like a DIY type option, where you sort of get a bit of a rough guide map, and away you go and put two and two together and find some fish. And that's a pretty great sensation at the end of the day as well. But yeah, a little bit of both, and then depending on who I'm fishing with, can as can dictate sort of what you do. But a lot of some of the trips I've done, especially when I'm flying, over that way towards where you are, and like the Caribbean and things, like we'll try and utilize our time a little more, because we're just traveling so far. Like I have done the odd crazy trip where you do all that flying just for such a small opportunity to fish, but it's just probably comes back to that
Right.
that sort of little bit of, I don't want to regret not taking the opportunity. But a lot of trips I've done, we'll try and fish, two different sort of places within a 2 week window, just to utilize our travel time, I guess, is the best way to put it.
Yeah, that makes sense. With all these places that you've been, I mean, there's so much diversity here. We could unpack this forever. The tarpon in the jungle of Nicaragua, for example, could get me going for a while. But for you, are there favorite places that you would put on a short list of places you've been?
Yeah, definitely. Like Cuba would be one. Bahamas would be another one. Uh, they're definitely short list. Probably, anywhere in the Seychelles, it'd be Devon. I don't think I actually put that on the list at first, but yeah, Seychelles. I fished that was pretty
Oh yeah,
spectacular.
that's a big one.
Yeah, but yeah, like the Cuba and Bahamas are definitely on my short list, and Cuba, yeah, the travel experience is great, and then coming from over here in Australia to travel that far, like Cuba's great because I'm going to get shots at the big three, the like permit, bonefish, and tarpon all in one trip, and that's yeah that's pretty spectacular. Like it's not getting you're not you for that so much travel time you're going to get a lot of a still really great variety and shots at those fish when you're putting in them big miles in the airplane.
With you having mentioned Cuba and Seychelles and I mean Australia, when I think about the Bahamas, I think it's bonefish, bonefish, bonefish. Not that aren't other species, but with especially considering the other places you've named and the fact that even within the United States, we have Florida. It's a little bit harder to get to the Bahamas, but people do that over and over and over again. What you mentioned the people, but as far as the fishing goes, what draws you to that destination, especially when it's almost, one species focused?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think a little bit just I think probably comes back to just like when you first got into fly fishing, just reading those books on like things from Lefty Cray and fly fishing in salt waters, those magazines, and just that triggers that little sort of that bit of wanderlust in your mind, like, and you just like, one day I'd like to go experience that and walk on those around in that sort of blinding white sand and crystal clear water and see those tails waving at you. I guess that's the best way
Right.
to put it, and that's what triggers it. And then maybe you get there and do it, and you're like, "Well, this is and then other factors of that destination come into play, and you're like, this is a pretty cool deal."
Yeah, it's funny that you describe it that way. I mean, it's not funny. It's just interesting that that I think for me, I do feel like I'm often chasing experiences I dreamed and read about in fly fishing media 20 years ago. That's interesting.
Yeah, because I remember what was it like on when we sort of first started to get ESPN in Australia, and what was this series? I think it was Rick Ruoff. I could be getting his name all wrong too. He used to have a bit of a half hour or 40-minute program on, and like he just used to do the coolest stuff. And like, that's just one of those little things that's stuck with me, and just seeing that sort of shallow water flats fishing.
Yeah. Um, you mentioned several figures. Are there people who have inspired you over the years to travel?
Yeah, definitely. Like Oliver's definitely one. Like I've fished with him and met him, and read a lot of his stuff, and the cool, that gets you fired up to get out there and see the world and travel and experience that fishing. And um, we also had a sort of it's sort of had a really good uncle. He sort of passed away when I was sort of in my early teens, but he sort of fished a lot, and he'd done quite a lot of fishing here in Australia and writing for quite a few magazines and things, and he sort of lit the fire quite a bit as well. And then I've sort of always that was a real sort of big driving point for where I am as well. We're just it's getting a little bit sort of a weird sort of sentimental thing going on here, but he's just I took a lot of that away of, like, as I said earlier, of not wanting to get to that anywhere in life and then regretting not having jumping in and taking those chances.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
guess, like I'm saying, I guess that probably lit that fire a little bit as well.
I imagine someone like you is always thinking, especially because of the pandemic, about where to go next. Um, are there places? I mean, you've mentioned favorite places. Are there places you have to go back to, and then are there places that? I mean, I imagine your list of places you haven't been isn't too long, but I'm sure you have a list. What's on your bucket lists?
Yeah, there's a few on there definitely. Los Roques is definitely on there. I'm really hanging out to get down there. I know the whole situation's a bit tricky to say the least, but as soon as it looks like I can get down there, I'm definitely getting down to Los Roques or Venezuela there to really give that a good seeing to. Um, Kamchatka is right up there as well. Like that just looks like the most awesome experience. Bears and mouse eating rainbow trout, and just that peninsula looks unbelievable. It's tiger fish in Tanzania and Africa, like South Africa. That's way up there. Like it's just it's another one of those. It's a trip where it's one of the only places where you can go target those fish in that setting. That's pretty cool. And then and that's similar to Bolivia. Like when I spent time there. Sorry, I dropped that off the list too. Sorry. But yeah, Bolivia's like Golden
Oh
Dorado.
yeah.
It's the same. Yeah, it's one of them fish species that you got to go to that destination because you're not going to find them anywhere else. They're like they're endemic to that locale, and you got to go there and live and breathe it and fish for them in that thing. So that's pretty cool. But tiger fish, yeah, definitely up there. And then they're probably some of the biggest ones for places I haven't been and things that are up on the list of where I want to go and fish and want to chase for sure.
When you've talked about Kamchatka, I really want to get there. It's probably going to be a while, um, but you mentioned the bears, and I know the Amazon's pretty wild. Have you had? I'm always interested in wild experiences with nature. Have you had any trips that are memorable in that regard? In that, there's encounters with a jaguar or you know anything that really captures that spirit of adventure.
Um, yeah, there's probably been a few. Um, haven't we had any? We've seen plenty of jaguar tracks when I was in Bolivia there when we're walking around in the rivers or we wake up in our like from the fly camps way upriver overnight. So that was always pretty cool and pretty humbling. And then plenty of saltwater crocodile encounters here in Australia. They're sort of
Oh
keep
right.
you on your toes plenty of times, that's for sure. And just like crazy, getting caught out in crazy squalls in places and, sort of things like that. Remember in Bolivia, we'd pick people up from the plane, up in the jungle airstrip, and we were in dugouts, sort of trying to make our way back up to the main camp. And I think it was me and myself, Alex, from Trip on Trout, and with the clients there, and we sort of we made like fly camp on like a sandbar going up the river for the night, and there we we made some dinner and stuff, and everyone had settled in. We're sort of around the campfire on the sandbar at night, and then everyone turned in, and then sort of woke up at I'm not sure, it was like 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. and was like, what's going on out there? And sort of climbed around the tent, and there's just crazy white cow sort of getting stuck into all the provisions.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. And we're out there, and then you're chasing it across the sandbar in the night time, getting rid of this thing. It's like, yeah, we're a bit short on bread and flour and stuff for
That's so
for
funny.
the next week. Yeah, it's just bizarre experiences, that's for sure.
Yeah. Um, what? Geez, the Dorado thing now makes me want to go down that route. Um, what would you say um, would be maybe your most memorable experience, or one of your most, or several of your most memorable experiences, like trips that you know, you reflect on or tell stories about the most?
Um, yeah, another good question. Saying that, like, I guess the first time, like when we fished in Costa Rica, like that was no, that was my second time tarpon fishing. That was an experience. Like I'd fished in Cuba maybe the year before, and we got really poor weather. Like yeah, it's just probably there at really the wrong time. Like, it was probably sort of mid June or something. But we just got one of those weather systems that come in and it just rained the whole week and sort of just shut the fishing down. It was real tricky. And so then we went back the next year to Costa Rica, just in the Caribbean side there, the tarpon fish at the lodge will come back to me. But we'll fish in I think it's a mouth of the Manzanillo River, and just yeah, wasn't sight fishing, but you see fish rolling and busting bait, and you sort of 12 weight in hand, you put that cast in, and you just fishing it back, and then you just get like the slightest little bump, and you're like, oh yeah, and then like set the hook, like come tight on the fish, and just next minute this 100+ pound tarpon's just like cartwheeling out of the front, out of the water in front of you, and you're just about. I remember the first time it happened, I just nearly fell out the other side of the boat, just
Right.
like just like holy, like this is just unbelievable. Like it's just that's definitely one. And then same like Nicaragua, that was a really neat experience too. Like that sticks one of them things. You lay in bed, you can still sort of almost put yourself right back in the picture of just same like that sun's just right on sunrise and the jungle is alive and there's howler monkeys and everything just talking and coming alive in the jungle there or going to bed. And you hear tarpon rolling all around you, just a big slurp, and that's just like that little snippet of it, right? Just things you take with you, I guess. Pretty neat. And like some of the feeding frenzies in Bolivia, we're just walking upriver, and then all of a sudden there's sabalo flying through the air and around your legs, and dorado swimming between your legs. And you're trying to push dugout canoes up a rapid, and just like if one of these things bite me, I'm probably going to lose half my calf muscle.
Right.
It's just wild stuff, but that's I think that's as you said, just that drives a lot of that passion and want to travel and experience more down the road for sure.
Do you have plans for travel coming up?
Um, Not for me. Like I said, Costa Rica, not Costa Rica, sorry, Los Roques is right up there. New Zealand at the end of this year is I'm heading back there. And then, international, as I said, Los Roques is probably going to be on the cards next year. I'm hoping all sort of settling down and looking normal. And then, same, I'll probably try and get back over and fish with mate Jack down in Louisiana probably next year as well. Or I think a lot of stuff is going to probably international stuff will open up next year, just for my scheduling. Louisiana definitely, and as I said, like Kamchatka would be a really neat one to try and get back to and fish, but I think it's all a bit of a mess up there at the moment. So
Right.
fish are getting a nice little rest.
You're the second person from an exotic destination, if you will, who has told me that they can't wait to get back to Louisiana. Why? I tried to be a little better about asking it
Yeah.
in that tone, but
Oh.
it's sort of in between so much other good fishing. But I've talked to people who live on the other side of the world and they can't wait to get back to Louisiana. What is it about that destination?
I don't know, the language, the way that accent on the people down there, like it's infectious. And same, like everyone's quite like that people are happy, and you always you bump into them at the ramp, like putting the skiffs in and you're having a chat, and then you go somewhere for a meal, and you're always friendly and having a chat at the end of the day. And the fishing, like, it's just being out there in that marsh. I'm not, it's not some wild out there untouched pristine environment, but I guess it's pristine in its own right, because it's so alive with marine life. But for the checkered past it's had, and then those big bull reds floating around, you can't beat that? Like, it's probably some of the best sight fishing you can have anywhere, especially when the stars align, and you got light winds and the sun's shining. That's hard to beat. And you see one of those 15, 20 pound, 25 pound bull reds just floating around or swimming with,
Right.
its eyeballs aren't even really in the water. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and culturally, there's nothing else in the United States even similar to Louisiana. There's no overlap to
No,
another
yeah.
state. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's almost like you need a passport to get in there, in a way.
Yeah, that's well
It's
put.
cool.
Uh,
Yeah, I don't mean that in a putting any like a bad way, but it's just like, it's just a totally different sort of, New Orleans, I guess, is New Orleans. It's sort of a bit party town and touristy, but once you get out of there and get down into, you get onto the marsh there, it's totally different.
and everything, the food, everything's different.
Yeah, it's awesome.
For those who um, are thinking about getting into a life of travel, what advice would you give?
Um, do they really want it? Get out there and do it and chase it, and get after it. That's for sure. If you get an opportunity, take it with two hands. Don't don't turn around in 5, 6 years, 10 years time, and uh, don't come out that woulda, shoulda, coulda, or just if it works for you and you can do it, do it.
Yeah.
Definitely don't regret it.
Well, I'd love to have you back on to talk about Australia, because there's so much there, from
Yeah, definitely.
trout to trevally, as I said before, and so much other stuff. I was using a little bit of self restraint when Fraser Island came up to not just
yeah,
turn
yeah.
this into a different topic. But for those who want to see more of where you've been and what you've been up to, what's the best way to follow you?
Just check out my Instagram, I guess, is best. It sort of covers a lot of my adventures and travels. It's just GeneFly80. That's that's the best medium to come along and check it out. A lot of my photos. And you'll probably see, I think, Nautilus always, they're using quite a lot of my photos as well.
Yeah, that's true.
That's pretty cool. You'll see some of the stuff come up there, and I think you've put a little bit of stuff up on the Venture and Angler there, time to time, and a few little clips and pieces from New Zealand and my travels. So people see that there. But yeah, just the Instagram account's the biggest one. And if, like I said, if anyone's ever got any questions, just shoot me a message on Instagram, and more than happy to answer anything for here in Australia or anywhere else I've traveled.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on. I enjoyed this, and we'll have you we'll have you back, and hopefully it doesn't take too long to schedule it. So, thanks again for coming on.
Yeah, no worries. Good stuff, Tim. And hopefully everyone understood from my Aussie English. Hope it all made sense.
I'm sure it did. You're good. Thanks again.
No worries. Thanks, Tim. Thank you.